Hey everyone, ever feel like drowning in information? Like too much to read?
Yeah, tell me about it.
Well, imagine having to read thousands of research articles.
Oh, wow.
That's what researchers doing systematic reviews have to deal with. It's how we make sure medical treatments are actually backed by, like, solid evidence, but it's a huge undertaking.
No kidding. It's essential, but man, is it time consuming.
Absolutely. But what if there was a way to, speed things up?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. There's this brand new research in PNAS. They're exploring whether AI could be the key.
AI, like robots taking over medical research.
Not quite robots, but close.
Huh.
We're talking about large language models, LLMs. They're basically super sophisticated AI systems that can process language like, well, you and me.
Okay, so LLMs AI for reading research papers, but for anyone who hasn't actually done a systematic review, what does it involve? I mean, step by step.
It's like the ultimate literature search. You've got to find every single study on a specific topic, literally everyone.
Every single one.
Wow. Yep. Then comes the hard part. You have to carefully evaluate each study to see if it meets specific criteria. Like, did it use a control group? Was the sample size big enough? Stuff like that.
So it's not just about finding any article, it's about finding the right articles and making sure the evidence is rock solid.
Exactly. You want that high-quality evidence.
Yeah.
And traditionally, you'd have at least two researchers independently reviewing each study
Two different people. Why?
to minimize bias.
Hmm.
You want to make sure the results aren't skewed by one person's opinion. But that means double the work. We're talking weeks, sometimes months spent reading articles.
Okay, so back to this PNAS research. They actually use these LLMs on real systematic reviews, right? Like with actual data. How much are we talking?
Oh yeah, they used 3 different reviews as examples.
What?
One of them had over 4,600 articles, 4,662 to be exact.
Whoa, over 4,000.
Yep. And the others were a bit smaller, 1,741 and 66 articles. But even 66, that's a lot to go through.
Okay, so that's a ton of reading. What did they find? Can AI actually handle this?
The results are amazing. They found these LLMs could reduce one reviewer's workload by, get this, anywhere from 33% to 93%.
Wait, 93%. So basically almost all the work done by AI.
Potentially, yeah. It could free up so much time for researchers. Instead of reading, they could be doing other things, like actually designing studies or analyzing data.
That's huge GE. But is it really as simple as just, dumping a bunch of articles into an AI and saying go?
Not exactly. The LLM's success really depends on how you define the criteria for including or excluding a study. Think of it like a really specific rule book for the AI, like
Yeah.
only include studies that meet these exact conditions.
Right, right. AI isn't some magic mind reader. You got to tell it exactly what you're looking for. So did they just use one type of LLM in the study, or were they comparing different ones?
They actually tested 18 different LLMs. They wanted to see if some were better suited for this than
What else do
others.
you need? Okay, so which one came out on top? Was it the biggest, fanciest one?
You might be surprised.
Oh.
Yeah. Some of the bigger models did do really well, but they weren't always the best. Sometimes these smaller, more streamlined LLMs were just as accurate, even with less computational power.
So it's not just about brute force, it's about finding the right tool for the job. That's really interesting.
Yeah, what's really cool is that they found the LLMs could actually help researchers refine their criteria even further.
Wait, so the AI is helping the humans get better at designing the reviews?
Yeah, like having an AI assistant that points out flaws in your logic, it's wild.
So are humans basically obsolete now?
No, not at all.
Oh, good.
The researchers were very clear. These LLMs are tools to support human researchers, not replace them. Human expertise is still absolutely vital for checking the AI's work and making those really complex judgments.
So it's more like a collaboration. AI does the heavy lifting and humans focus on the big picture stuff. That's amazing. But I have to ask, are there any ethical concerns about using AI for something as important as medical research?
That's a great point. It's definitely something we need to consider carefully. That's a great point. It's definitely something we need to consider carefully. Like, how much are we going to rely on AI for something as important as medical knowledge,
Right. It can't just be a black box. Data goes in, recommendations come out, how to get there.
Exactly. And the researchers actually dug into how these LLMs were, thinking. They looked at how each one evaluated the criteria for inclusion or exclusion, trying to see what was most important in making the decision.
So it's not just a thumbs up or thumbs down. The AI is actually weighing different things like a human would.
Yeah. And they found some interesting trends. For example, in the review about physiotherapy treatments, things like the type of intervention and whether there was a control group, Those were strong predictors across almost all the LLMs.
Which makes sense. Those are like basics for good study, right?
Exactly. But, of course, it wasn't always that straightforward. Some criteria were a little fuzzier, more open to interpretation.
Ah, okay. So gray areas. What happened there?
That's where it gets really interesting. They found that by refining those criteria, making them more specific, you could actually make the LLMs even more accurate.
So the AI helps us ask better questions, and that leads to better research overall.
Exactly. It's like this two-way street. We're not just training the AI, it's helping us improve our research methods, too.
That's cool. But I'm sure there were some bumps in the road, right? What kind of challenges did the researchers face?
One thing that came up was inconsistencies in how the LLMs formatted their output. Like sometimes they'd add extra text that messed up the system trying to process the results.
Kind of like trying to be helpful, but making things more complicated.
Exactly. Shows that even with these fancy AI systems, you still need careful design and testing, making sure it all works together smoothly.
Right, right. Oh, and something else I was wondering. Requiring all the criteria to be met for an article to be included seems pretty strict. Could that miss out on some relevant research?
That's a great point. The researchers actually tested a different approach, something called a random forest classifier.
Random forest. Sounds intriguing.
It basically lets you combine the different criteria in a more flexible way.
So instead of a yes or no based on everything, this random forest can weigh the different factors.
Precisely. And they found this often led to better results overall. It shows there's real value in exploring these more sophisticated ways to use the information from the LLMs.
It sounds like there's still a lot to learn about how to best use these LLMs, but the potential is huge E.
For sure. And remember, the LLMs they tested, that's just a snapshot. This field is changing so fast, we can expect even more powerful AI coming soon.
Which makes me think, what else could AI do in the research world? We've talked about screening articles, but could it help with designing studies, analyzing data, maybe even writing the papers?
Now, that's a question. And
Yeah.
actually, the researchers DO touch on that in their paper, talking about future directions and all.
So we've covered how these LLMs can save researchers a ton of time and even make systematic reviews better. But what about the bigger picture? What does this mean for the future of science itself?
What's really fascinating is how this research makes us rethink the role of AI in science. It's not about replacing humans, it's about a new kind of partnership, where AI and human expertise work together.
A new era of discovery with AI as a collaborator. That's exciting.
It really is. And the researchers are very clear, we need to keep talking about the potential impact of these LLMs on a whole research process. What does it mean for how we do science?
It's a conversation we all need to be a part of. So to our listeners, if you're like, whoa, I got to learn more, we highly recommend checking out this research.
Yeah, it's a great paper. It's called Transforming Literature Screening, The Emerging Role of Large Language Models in Systematic Reviews by Delgado Chavez and the rest of their team.
We've got the link in the show notes so you can easily find it. It really is a fascinating deep dive. Like, they go into the details of how these LLMs work and, what it could mean for the future.
Really makes you think, like, what are the possibilities, but also what are the challenges?
Exactly. I mean, we might be on the edge of a whole new way of doing science. It's kind of mind-blowing.
It is. It's like science fiction becoming reality. Who knows, maybe one day we'll be doing a deep dive on a research paper that was actually co-authored by an AI.
Right. The future is wide open, and that's what's so exciting about it.
Totally. But for now, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep into, all this amazing knowledge out there.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive, so until then, stay curious.